legal stress.
Yeah, probably.
But my screensaver is not white. And they're saying, not really, I'm just kidding.
I've worked with that a long time. Can I do that again? Got everybody attention? Sorry, guys. Good morning, Gate City.
Good morning, Ralph.
I'm replacing Mr. Chris this morning. He's at the beach with his family. Bridget, can you do the invocation, please? Bridget. Sorry. There she is. Thanks for not leaving, Bridget.
Let me just preface this by saying it's been a great blessing, so if everyone knows it, please go through the campaign. No Lord Jesus, I guess we, unless it's this mistake, bless our loved ones, every day,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
things that we say.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, Matthew, Sergeant of Arms.
Morning, everyone. Today we've got 43 Rotarians here, or 48. We have several visiting Rotarians. We have Deborah Freed from Southern. We have Bob Lynn from Guilford. We have Griselda Clark, which I think she says she's from Greensboro. All right. Lisa Simpson has a guest this morning.
I do, thank you. Welcome my colleague and friend Laura Kirkpatrick. Laura is one of the most creative people I know. She also teaches yoga if you have any interest at dancing dogs.
And Justin Plummer / Jeff Tillman has a guest. Ed, stand up and introduce yourself.
He really doesn't know me. Ed Ravensburg, work construction, glad to be here, formerly with Guilford Rotary, and moving to this Rotary. Thank you.
Excuse me, I have a guest too, Gigi Renaud. She is from the Center for Creative Leadership. She visited here a few months ago, good friends with Emily. She's in financial management out at Center for Creative Leadership. Please welcome Gigi Renaud.
Birthdays and anniversaries.
We have some birthdays. On August 11th, Sean Roberts will have a birthday. August the 12th, Jim Kennedy.
He's out of country.
They don't show up. On the 13th, we have 3 birthdays. Dale Farlow, Kelly Harrell, and Ross Keller. And Sean's wife has a birthday on August 11th as well. Same day as him. Wedding anniversary, Steve and Tana Wertz are celebrating their anniversary on the 12th of August. And Rusty and Debbie Hoffman will be celebrating August 14th, their anniversary. Okay?
Thank you very much. I hope Chris is watching this. He'll watch it tomorrow, probably. No games today, Chris. It's too early in the morning. Okay. Announcement. Ashley, I know you had an announcement.
Hello, everyone. It's very good to see you again. I've been on leave, but I did want to come back and talk about our exchange students. Is Tony here? No? Okay. So Tony and also Erica have been hugely helpful. I'm hosting, Beth Sheffield is hosting. I think that George and I are going to do the first half of the year at least, and then Beth is going to keep our exchange student while in the tax season, and then it's possible she might stay with Beth, and might come back with us, but we're going to tag team it together. And she said, I think that you're like the host mom and I'm the host aunt. So we've definitely taken the lead on it. Her name is Tony Klebanowski. Her full name is Antonia. She's a lovely young woman from the suburbs of Berlin. She will be going to Grizzly, and she loves field hockey, so we're working on getting her on the field hockey team. So for a 24-year grad of Grizzly, my husband said, you realize we'll be going to football games again this year. I said, I know, so it's going to be really fun getting back involved in my old school. She is arriving on August the 22nd. That's a week from Monday at 6 p.m. I would love to have some Rotarians there with us to greet her. I know Beth's going to be there, hopefully Tony, Tanya Higgins, who's in charge of the exchange students, but it'd be great to have some people from our club if you want to join us. I'll send a reminder close to time. And then also we've arranged for her to do an introduction of herself at Rotary that Thursday morning on the 25th. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Chip, we still good on the fundraiser? Nothing yet, all right. We're good. It's a little early. I'm just going on my little notes that Chris gave me. Happy Dollars.
Happy Dollars!
I'll start them off, Buster.
Well, I just wanted to say, Ashley, before you go over to the stadium, you might want to check and make sure Grizzly's playing football this year.
I won't play this year.
Are you playing there? Okay. I just want, you might want to check and make sure.
I've got two Happy Dollars. One is for me, and one is for my son for accomplishing his Eagle Scout Award.
Oh.
That's me. We accomplished.
Okay.
It's the hardest thing for a parent.
You did a great project, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
David, all right.
I've got two this morning. First of all, my fifth grandchild was born a couple of days ago in the Philippines, and her name is Shiloh Mead. So I've got plenty of pictures, happy to show them until you're absolutely sick to your stomach. And then the other one is I got a great email last night from NBS Nutrition or Hydration. They're a company that's really on the cutting edge of endurance sport and nutrition, and they're sending us bags of the stuff that we need for Hope Ride, which leaves in about 10 days. So it's just great to welcome a new sponsor.
All right.
So Happy Dollar. All of those that were in the meal packing on Monday, would you raise your hand? I know there were several of us there. Our Happy Dollar, obviously, is that we packed 50,000 meals on Monday. But the real treat for my wife and I was that our table included Gail Stansel and her two daughters and one of their friends, and we had the best time, and I think they did as well. So we were tired when we left, but it was just great to be with Gail and those girls, and just to see them have a wonderful time. So it did.
Saturday, my wife graduated from Wake Forest University with her master's in counseling. We went to the school store, we were getting some t-shirts and stickers and all that stuff, and she said, well, honey, you went to App State, you're being a little overzealous about all this. And I said, well, I'll remember that when the bills come next month. So needless to say, I need somewhere to watch the Panthers game tonight.
Chip. Yeah, well, we took Walter off to school on Monday, which he didn't class will start for 2 weeks. I'm not sure what he's doing down there. But he came home last night, and here he had cooked a big dinner and all that. We didn't have a chance to do that Sunday night because of some other things. But so as I was going to bed last night, I yelled up to Wilder, who was watching. It sounded like he wanted to maybe upstairs. I said, good night, buddy. Take care. I'll see you soon. He said, yeah, if y'all don't make the football game in October, I'll see you at Thanksgiving or maybe Christmas.
Well, Grandpappy Lewis, he had a buddy, and Buddy had just gotten a new dog. And Grandpappy said, well, is this dog smart? And he said, is he's smart. He said he licked the crumbs off my keyboard and got a degree from Trump University.
What?
A lot of Republicans in the crowd.
Why is the room so quiet?
Didn't like that very much.
I thought it was hilarious.
All right, guys, I'd like to introduce one of my favorite speakers. I saw him a couple of years ago after hearing him speak, and we were at a party, a social event. I told him at that time with a couple of cocktails down. I said, I am definitely having you back. This is after, obviously, Dan asked me to be president and counted on him, so I'm thinking way in advance. But Doug Copeland serves as president of the High Point Clinical Trials Center. Job he began in January, sorry. For the previous 16 years, Doug has served as president and publisher of Business Journal, as many of you know. His professional career spans from a number of roles in North Carolina and in Washington, D.C. Prior to his role as president of the Triad Business Journal, he served as the vice president of Cone Health from 1981 to 1999. He served in Washington as chief of staff to U.S. Congressman Richard Pryor of North Carolina. He also served in the White House doing advanced work in issues management with President Jimmy Carter and served Carter on his national campaign staff in 1976. Doug is a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill. He has received National Leadership Award from the National Association of Community Leadership Programs and the Spirit of Entrepreneurship Award from Junior Achievement of Central North Carolina. He serves in a number of leadership roles, including the boards of the Old North State Council of Boy Scouts of America, Devant, the Forsyth Hospital Foundation, chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee of the Greensboro Partnership, the Board of Visitors, the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and High Point University. He is the immediate past president of Greensboro Rotary. He enjoys the rather unusual hobby of traveling to Normandy, France, each June to thank the 90-year-old veterans who landed on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, June 6th during World War II, and returns each year for the celebrations of that occasion. Last June, he returned for his 17th reunion with these men, and that's why we're having Doug here today. We're going to have an interesting talk.
Okay, I need a 12-year-old here. Let's see what we can do here to get this started. Okay. Well, good morning and thank you for having me today. As you know, I spoke to this group on this same topic some years ago. And so for those of you who are of my age genre, I feel like that old joke about being Elizabeth Taylor's fifth husband. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm just not sure how to make it interesting. There are no Democrats in the crowd, but apparently there's some over 60 that remember every one of those 5 marriages. You know, the challenge when Ralph called me is, you know, if you had an update a year ago on LeBauer Park, and if you had Walker back today to talk about LeBauer Park, a lot has changed in downtown Greensboro over the past 12 months. Ditto Union Square campus, ditto, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, all this happened 72 years ago, and in spite of revisionist history, it's still the same. So I really have a little challenge to make it interesting. I do have a few new stories, and Ralph assured me you have some new members so that possibly we can share this passion with a few other people. But anyway, I started this many years ago. I go to Normandy every year for the celebrations that happen in every small French village, thanking the men that liberated their country. You know, we were attacked on 9/11, but we still have no sense of what it's like to be an occupied nation. And I will just tell you, when you travel Normandy and you tell somebody you're an American, I mean, they really do say, regardless of the fact I wasn't even born then, thank you for what you did, because it really is a grateful nation. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to come to know these men and to have, because of all the years, a relationship. And so what I want to do in the next few minutes is, if you will,
tell you a little bit about some of their stories and the things that I learned about them during my 17 years. I have found a couple of new stories for you to share, or that kind of thing. So, what do we know about Normandy? It happened June 6th. It was after months and months of planning. They invaded from Britain to the Normandy area. They invaded on 6 different beaches named Utah, Omaha, Gold, Sword, Juneau, etc. I've got a little story in a few minutes about the invasion, something I learned just this year from a Dutchman. We have said 156,000 men invaded that day. Just to give you a sense, that's like taking the city of High Point, Darlene, and moving it in one day from England to France in one day. And we think about our friend Louis DeJoy and his logistics company. I believe that would be a challenge even for Louis to move 156,000 men and all their equipment. And on that day, there were 9,600 casualties, about 2/3 of them American. Those weren't all deaths, just casualties. And I think it's important also to point out that day, that during the Normandy invasion, there were several weeks, 20,000 French civilians lost their lives. And my best French friend, a guy named Dominique Francois, his grandfather was killed that day by an American bombardment. And he comes to Greensboro every year. He loves Americans and understands, and I know his father, so this would be Dominique's father's father. And I see Dominique's father every year, and his father was 6 at the time, and he has no issues with the Americans killed his father in a bombardment. He understands cerebrally that that's what had to happen. So, how did all this begin for me? I read Brokaw's books, The Greatest Generation Remembers, and The Greatest Generation Speaks, and I was really moved. I get on the internet like everybody, and start Googling around, and I find out that all these little ceremonies take place in all these villages. And at the time, 17 years ago, these men were about 75 years old, and they literally returned by the thousands on June 6th from America and from the UK for these ceremonies that happened in every French village. So not knowing a soul, I got on an airplane, flew to France, got in a car in Paris, and drove to Normandy. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. I arrived at the first area in Normandy that was liberated. This is the first thing that was liberated, Pegasus Bridge. And there's a cafe right beside there where all these men gather. This is a British sector, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. But they're all affable, blue blazers. They wear coat and tie every day, gray pants, polished shoes. I might segue here and say Americans wear blue jeans, tennis shoes. All of you who knew my joke will remember members-only jackets and ball caps. So it's a different look with the Americans, if you will. Not bad. But anyway, I went up to the first table of men, and there were 6 of them, not this particular picture, but 6 of them sitting around the table. And I just walked up to them, and really from here to Kelly, I figured out what I was going to do, and I said, went up to every one of them and said, "My name is Doug Copeland. I came to the United States to thank you for what you did on June the 6th. Walked around. I stand there and not sure what I'm going to do next, and fortunately the Brits have a wicked sense of humor. And a man looks up and says, "And Doug, we're just heading into the cafe to get a beer." And I said, "Yes, sir, I was." "And Doug, you want to hear our stories, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." "Well, Doug, when you bring our beers back, we will tell you our stories." I told my friend John Hunter's son that one time, and he said, "Doug, that wasn't the first time he used that line." So let me tell you a little bit about my friend Captain John Hunter. Last time I told you when we were here, I met John, as I said, in this cafe in Bennoville, and he was my best friend, so I brought him to this country once for about 2 weeks to meet with all the World War II veterans at the time. This would have been about 10 or 12 years ago. All the World War II veterans that I knew at the time, and we went to Fort Bragg, we went to the Tank Museum in Danville. And last time I was here, I told you about the story that he goes to this small French village, the village that had hidden him during the 2 weeks of the Normandy invasion. They had hidden he and his mates in barns and in sheds and in basements. And he took me to the cemetery where 24 of them were buried. And then he went to this town square without telling me, where he and his mate every year would lay a wreath on the memorial to the villagers that were killed. They were killed because the Germans found out they were hiding Allied soldiers. And they took all the villagers that had hidden Allied soldiers out in the town square, regardless of age, and shot them dead. As I told you a couple of years ago, I've had the pleasure of attending the inaugurations of 3 U.S. presidents. Chip, they wouldn't be the inaugurations you would choose to attend, but including sitting on the podium during one of those with the president. I've been to every kind of moving ceremony you can ever be with brass bands and reviewing stands, but nothing was as moving as watching these 2 men, all by ourselves in this small town square, honor the villagers that saved these men's lives. But let me tell you another story about John. As I said, he landed near Pegasus Bridge. He had, let's see if I got a picture of it. This is an example of an Allied soldier. They had about 100 pounds of gear on them, and you have to remember back then, these guys weighed about 100 pounds. So he landed in this area, and he said, Doug, I was pretty scared. But he told me a story about when he was getting on the plane. There's one of his mates that had 2 canvas rucksacks. He said, do you understand what those are, Doug? I said, yeah, we call them LL Bean bags here, for those of you, again, who remember when they first came out. And they get on the plane, and the sergeant major says, son, what have you got there? He said, sir, we're going to need extra ammunition. So I brought extra ammunition. And he said, you dumb so-and-so. He said, the minute that parachute hits, you're going to lose that, and it's all going to go out. And, you know, if fate has it that way, it's going to hit some parachute below you, and you're going to cause a death. So Captain Hunter tells me that they each have 1 empty pocket inside their blouse, which is what they call their jacket. And so they pass this ammo out, and because they weighed so much already, they're cussing this guy. So they pass the clips out, and they put them in that 1 empty pocket. Captain Hunter lands, he's scared to death, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's right beside a German pillbox, and had the machine gun not been attached, he would be dead. They just couldn't get it low enough to kill him right there. And he threw a couple grenades in the pillbox and neutralized it. So he started running around here, there, and yon, and he gets to this little church. And he was very honest. He said, Doug, I'm scared to death. So I opened this door in this, at the bottom of the steeple, and I jump in, and it's the privy. And it's still there today. I go there every year. Captain Hunter's deceased now, and I lay a poppy on the door right there to honor him. And all of a sudden, this fire, he's sitting there trying to compose himself for a minute, and he says, bam, against the door. And Captain Hunter says, you know, I need to see what that is. So he opens, the German's been wounded, and he's against the door, but he's still alive. And he thinks, if the Germans win this skirmish, they're going to get this guy, they're going to open the door, they're going to find him. So he pulls him in. He's sitting across from him in the privy, and the German starts going like this. Of course, he wants a cigarette. Well, Captain Hunter reaches, he had kept his Bugle Boy tobacco, right there, his tobacco and his rolling papers right there on this same side. He reaches in to get his tobacco, and I think I got a picture of the can right there, and there's a bullet hole all the way through it. And there's a bullet hole through his papers. And he opens his jacket and pulls out that clip, and there's a dent in the clip that he didn't want to carry. Captain Hunter still has all this, and not on trip 1, but on trip 2, where we would always meet. There's a lot of beer and wine associated with these businesses. Mostly beer. And of course, of that genre, these guys are now 90, a lot of hard liquor. As a matter of fact, when I had Captain Hunter here, I had 3 nights of guys over at the house having cocktails. And Gene and I are probably like most of you, you know, we drink a little wine, a little beer, and that kind of thing. I ran out of tonic water, soda, all that, you know, halfway through the first night because I wasn't prepared for this age group, if you will. But anyway, Captain Hunter still has that jacket and the hole in it and all that. It's really moving. Well, let me move on, and there it is up close, if you will, and nothing to be scary. That happens to be the clip right there. He's emptied the shells out of it. Let me tell you again about Dennis Boardman. Dennis Boardman is an Irishman born in County Cork, and when I went to him and used that line, thank you, what you do, he said, no, thank you. He said, Doug, until the Americans entered the war, we had no armament. And in my life, the one thing that I did early in the war, before I became a parachute infantry regiment, was I guarded the English coast. And being a younger, smart whippersnapper, I said, by yourself? He said, no, there were 4 of us. Well, the English coast, you know, is about 600 miles long. He said, Doug, almost, and that's Dennis on the far left, almost, he said, I was in charge of guarding 1 mile of the English coast, and I stood outside a guardhouse, and every 15 minutes I would go inside the guardhouse, go out a secret door in the back, wander through the brush a quarter mile, and get into another guardhouse and stand there thinking we were fooling somebody. I said, that is pretty silly. He said, Doug, it gets worse. Among the 4 of us, before the Americans entered and provided all that armament, if you've ever seen any pictures of England, right before the invasion, it is just massive trucks, tanks, and equipment. Again, to make even Louis DeJoy have challenges to move all that. He said, among the 4 of us, there was only 1 real rifle. The other 3 were carved out of wood and painted. We had nothing. And had the Germans invaded at that very moment, we wouldn't be here today. That's Dennis a couple of years ago. About 2 years ago, there are a group of us that come every year, saying we're from all over the world. And one of my Danish friends, a friend from Holland, called me up or texted me or messaged me, said there's a service in Prince Albert Hall, or Albert Hall rather, in London today. It's November 11th, which is Armistice Day, Veterans Day. He said, y'all watch it on BBC TV? Well, I didn't have BBC TV, but I pulled it up on the internet. First thing that happens after the opening hymn is, and now we're going to have a prayer from Dennis Boardman. And it was a little eerie to be sitting in Greensboro, North Carolina, in my den, listening to this prayer being read by this man that I had met just 2 years before, if you will. I want to introduce you to a new friend of mine. It's Fred Lee. Fred is a Brit, member of the, and let me just say here, I know the Brits better because it's closer. They come every year, so you get to know them better. It's a haul for a 75 to 90-year-old American to go. The second thing is, the Brits are subsidized 1,000 pounds by part of the British lottery. And every Normandy veteran that wants to come back every year gets a 1,000 pound subsidy. So I do know the Brits a little better than the Americans because we've had the chance to meet 17 times. Fred Lee is a member of the Normandy Veterans Association. He's my youngest friend. He turned 90 Saturday week ago. And so there's a big birthday bash for him. But he's a member of the Normandy Veterans Association. Fred served on the USS HMS Ent. That's a big faux pas. The HMS Ent, and his story, other than the fact that he has 2 great stories as I've gotten to know him. One story is that he served on this ship, and one night he was assigned. He had the same watch every night, so he did 3rd shift here. And one night they said, we want you to move over to the starboard side, to the port side, where you normally served on the starboard side. And that day, a Messerschmitt flew a flying bomb into the side where he normally stands guard. And 9 of his shipmates were killed and 23 wounded. This is Fred this year. But Fred's real claim to fame is 2 years on the 70th anniversary of the invasion. The little village that we hang out in, it's called Armanche. And for that day, the Prince and Duchess came. So Fred's real claim to fame is that at lunch that day, I shot this picture of him, he got to sit, that's hidden to the princess's right, the Duchess's right. So he got to sit beside Kate Middleton, the one day to be Queen of England. And so that's his true claim to fame. I want to introduce you to Peter Thompson. Peter is my longest living friend, veteran. He's quite a bit older. But he landed on D-Day. But his real claim to fame is that he lied about his age. And on June the 6th, on the way over that night, he turned 18. And so they thought, he said it wasn't the kind of birthday party he wanted. But even to this day, on the night of June the 5th, we all stay up. And these guys, my friends range from 90, Fred, to 102. And we all stay up until midnight and toast him happy birthday. And today, he said, it's a lot more fun. One of the things I don't have any pictures of is a story about another man that lied about his age in America. And Tom Brokaw and I got to spend a good deal of time together because of our shared passion about these men. And Brokaw tells the story. His mother was the postmistress in his Midwestern town. And the day after Halloween one year, some man comes in and he's just cussing up a blue streak. He said, the kids in town on Halloween had egged his house or done something. And he talked about how they were all juvenile delinquents and he just couldn't be calmed down. And Brokaw's mother looks across the counter at him and says, Milton, you were 15 or 16 years old. What were you doing on Halloween night when you were 16 years old? He looked right into her eyes and said, I was landing on the beaches of Iwo Jima. And at the other end of the beach was my brother. And I watched him get shot. Brokaw tells a story about his mother not being able to be calm for a week after that. Because at 16 years old, one of the town residents had landed on the beaches of Omaha, of Iwo Jima, and watched her brother be killed on Halloween. And so she, needless to say, felt tremendous remorse for having talked to him in that way. So many of these boys that we know, we hear the stories all the time, lied about their age to serve their country. Here are a couple of quick hits from this year, if you will. It is wonderful. This is another Brit. This happens to be where we started our trip this year. But I meet someone new every year who's come back, and they tell the story. This is a Brit, and his job was to ferry ships from America. Again, we did the armament, from America over to England, and that's what he did the entire war. And it doesn't sound very dangerous, except for those U-boats that are in the Atlantic. That does put a spin on it. I continue to be amazed at the number of people who come back, even at their age. You know, the average age is in the upper 90s, and these are in pretty good health. There are always these little stories you can never quite imagine. The man on the left is a Brit. He was in a tank unit, and he was a radio operator. And the man sort of in the middle with this coat that looks so slightly Germanic was his counterpart in the German army. He served in a tank unit as a radio operator. And these guys just by coincidence met this day at the British cemetery. And that's an interpreter there on the far right with the camera. And it was just fascinating to just be a fly on the wall and listen to these men. The German was inducted or forced to join the Hitler Youth when he was 13, and so became this radio operator. And these two men, just pure coincidence, met each other, and they had the same job in different armies. And of course, there's no hate among these men today. They understand they were all just drafted or had to do a job. But it's fascinating to be able to sit with these men and just listen to them tell the same stories from different viewpoints. The other thing that's amazing, the woman that sort of looks like she's in a military uniform is actually a soprano that sang during some of the ceremonies. And it is just amazing. She went up to thank this veteran, and it is amazing to watch these men as they remember their colleagues that died. And again, this was 72 years ago, and it's like it was yesterday. And this fellow could not be consoled, and she just spent so much time with him as he's telling her about his friends that were killed that day, because we were in the cemetery. When you're in Normandy, so many different things are still there just like they were. You know, obviously this was a captured German gun on the coast, but all this armament was left there by the Americans and the Germans, and the French kept a lot of it. You'll see some of it in just a second. And I'm always amazed at the job they did. I mean, this is Point de Hawk, and that's the rock they had to scale that day with machine guns shooting down at them. I mean, it's just always, you think about, you know, you're 18 years old and some guy says, go up there. And I don't know that we do that today. I mean, it's a different world. And these men went up that, scaled that rock. This is a panoramic view, but I just want to give you a sense of how people turn out every year. This is in a village called Alfreville. I'm going to scroll through a couple of quick slides in a minute so we can get finished this time. But it's just amazing the villagers that turn out. And this is where the 82nd Airborne, this is important to me because 82nd Airborne landed here, 507 Parachute Infantry Regiment. Whenever one of these veterans dies, the village gathers at this memorial and has a service for them. That's it. Whenever these American dies over here, there was a member of the 507 Parachute Infantry Regiment. They gather at this memorial and have a service honoring them. And again, this happens to be after the ceremony you just saw, but this is their town hall. This is the short end of it, but if I turned around the other way, I mean, it's a room this size. It's filled with Frenchmen thanking the Americans and Allied soldiers that came back for the ceremonies. And they're pretty kind because this happens to be my friend Dominique Francois' house, and he always invites the veterans to his home in his village to thank them and feed them. Tony had a story about some of the allies that I learned this year for the first time. Of course, as a part of the ceremony, as a part of the invasion of the Czechs, the Poles, the Dutch were all allies. They had been invaded. And just like the French, a certain portion of them got away. And I ran into two Dutchmen that had invaded Normandy. And I'm sort of thinking what you did and asked him what it was like on June 6th. He said, well, we're Dutch. I don't know what that means. He said, Doug, where are you from? It's North Carolina. He says, rural? I said, yes, we have a rural farming community. Now, Doug, on D-Day, I don't care what uniform you had on, if you heard someone speaking Polish, Czech, or Dutch, which are very Germanic in their sound. And you had a gun, what would you do? I'd shoot them. He said, exactly. The Poles, the Dutch, the Russians, and the Czechs were not allowed to invade on D-Day. They were not allowed to come into Normandy until 1 month after the invasion. And it was just fascinating to me that somebody was that smart to figure that out, that if you spoke with a Germanic accent, that I was going to shoot you. So I learned something every year. You know, we're having a bathroom controversy here. I know I'll never be invited back. This is a brand new restroom facility in one of the French villages. I don't know if you can see to the far right, but that's a car, so they don't have the same issues we have. They don't worry like we do, but I just had to include that this time.
What kind of car was that? Not allowed bathroom.
Chip, you're not as old as I am, but you know, when you're wandering through France and you find a facility like this, you don't care where it's located.
Better than a tree.
Exactly. Again, I'm very fond of the 82nd Airborne, of course, which is based here in North Carolina. And they use this as a training drop every year. So they come in. It's very moving to see these men who are stationed in North Carolina land. But the one thing I can never appreciate is the bond these men have. The man that landed on June the 6th and his counterpart today. Just to watch these guys, they really do get tears in their eyes. As I said, there's a lot of armament left. Just like we have the Guilford Battleground reenactors, they had the reenactors. They have all this equipment that was just left there and has been restored. And the only challenge is, again, all these American soldiers speak French, not English. You know, I have some hobbies. Some of them take up a little too much space in the house. But if I had any of this stuff in my backyard, I believe that who was going to be looking for a place to watch the game? I'd be looking for a place to live if this was stored in my backyard, because there's 3 C-47s that guys have and just are restored and still fly. It's an expensive hobby. Greensboro always makes the news, and this year there's a brand new museum that opened, and I was going through it. They have a C-47 in there, and through computer technology you get on it and you really live the experience the men did. But after I got off the C-47, was going through, one of the walls had this as one of the, they had just a whole wall of newspaper postings. And you know, you're in Normandy, France, and then the Greensboro Daily News is one of the papers that's on the wall. I think it's pretty cool. ORD, of course, we had, and I mentioned my friend Dominique Francois. These were, all these pictures are at ORD, where, as you can see from this, 330,000 servicemen. I told this story 2 years ago, but I was in Dominique's house one year, and American says, you know, where were you born? I said, USA. Where were you born? I was born in North Carolina. No, where were you born? I said, I was born in Richmond. No, where were you born? I was born in St. Leo's. And he yells across the room, Mildred! Everybody turns around and looks, and I think I've done something terribly wrong. She brings her up, and turns out she had followed him to ORD, to Bessemer Avenue, and Summit Avenue, and those kinds of things. And he snuck out a couple of times, and it turns out she was pregnant. She stays in Greensboro, or someone was born in St. Leo's, where I was. And they never met anybody in Greensboro, much less somebody was born in the same hospital that he was. The anniversaries were tremendous. I mean, this was the 60th anniversary when these men were a little more mobile. Units from all allied nations walked in. It was pretty incredible to watch them. But the thing that was so moving to me is that the president, the heads of all 18 allied nations were there, France, you know, Australia, et cetera, et cetera. And these dignitaries are used to people standing and honoring them. But for 1 hour, all these dignitaries stood and applauded for these men. So that's pretty cool to watch, the reverse, if you will. As I said, Alphaville is an area where the 82nd Airborne landed, so it's pretty important to me. It's a place that I love to go. These men still come back. This man's passed away, Chris Hessler, since then, but I'm good friends with his daughter. But again, in every village, as I indicated before, they have ceremonies honoring the Americans, and they really do appreciate and understand what we did, that without us, this would be German territory today. And it's very moving and very special to watch the Frenchmen. Does anybody remember when I talked about Jack Schlegel when I was here? Does this name sound familiar as I get through the story? Jack Schlegel parachuted in. He was a member of the 82nd Airborne, and he and his mate, that's him back then, he and his colleague got lost. And they knocked on a French, and somebody nod if this story sounds familiar. I can't remember if I thought or not, because I want to be quick if I have, but they knocked on a Frenchman's door, a French farm door, and as Jack said, you know, I was born in Germany. I immigrated to America very early on as a youth, but my accent was German in New York, and so for me to try to imitate French, you know, je suis Americain, didn't work so well. They finally got to let him into the house, and they were lost, and he said, it was pretty good, 2 in the morning, over wine, cheese, and bread. I got reoriented to where we were and where we were supposed to be. He said, wasn't bad. He said, you know, if this is war, I'm all for it, you know, this is what it's like. Well, 2 years ago, on the 70th anniversary, Jack Schlegel became the poster child for Winters Magazine. They followed him all around France as he met with school groups, as he, you know, in the whole week. Well, the story about Jack's landing was that he got oriented by this French farmer, a young French farmer and his wife, and on the way out the door, he cut his initials with just a little piece of metal into his parachute infantryman badge, rather, and gave it to the French farmer's wife. Jack first went back to Normandy in 1994, and he started traveling around with a Frenchman to find the place that he had landed. Out of pure coincidence, they knocked on a French farmhouse door to tell this story. And as it turns out, that was the French farmhouse that he had hidden in for those first couple of hours and got reoriented. He tells the story of telling the story about leaving his parachute infantry badge with the farmer's wife. The woman in the house pulls him back to a back bedroom where there's an infirm woman laying in bed. She opens a box, pulls a scarf out of the top of the box, and below it pulls Jack's parachute infantry badge, some 50 years later. She looks up at him and she said, all of my life I've wanted to see you again, and I've stayed alive knowing this moment would happen. And he found out from the farmer's family 2 years later she passed away. Well, Jack spent 2 years ago, the week of Normandy, traveling around, entertaining people, telling stories. As you can tell, he's hale and hearty. He sat right behind President Obama. Sorry about that, Jim. I am so glad that you have the closest up-front seat. But Chip, if you look just to the right of Obama's face, that's Jack Schlegel.
Oh, there's a bomb. Oh, there he is.
Chip, I write a column for the Rhino now. My next one is going to be on why Barack Obama will go down as one of America's greatest presidents. Ralph and I have agreed to have, since y'all meet Thursday morning, it comes out Thursday afternoon, Ralph has agreed to let me put copies at every place next Thursday. I know. Chip will have indigestion before his first meeting. Anyway, we were in Dominique Francois' house the night of June 6th, and you can sort of give a sense from the pictures the kind of week Jack Schlegel had. Jack, we're over wine and cheese, and he turns to me and says, you know, if I died tomorrow, it would have been great, because it would be fine, because I've been in heaven this week. On June the 7th, Jack Schlegel, like all of us, flew back to the United States. And on June the 9th, this hale and hearty man died. You have to think there is a Lord, there is a God, that gives men like Jack Schlegel the chance to come back to America, to where he fought, and be a hero again for a week, and then die 2 days later. Andre Manachet is someone I met there. I know I'm running out of time, but she is someone that every week, she was a young teenager, and every week she goes and lays greens on this memorial for the 507th. And she tells a story. We were occupied, Doug. You have no earthly idea what it's like to be a teenager. You're living in the basement of your home while you're occupied. You know, I'm a teenage girl at 14 or 15. I can't have a boyfriend. I can't go out at night. They robbed me of my youth, and that's why I'm so grateful for the Americans. Every Friday she walks down to this monument and lays a wreath on it. Well, I've been fortunate that over these past 17 years, I've had the chance to get to know the survivors, the men and women who are still here, and watch how grateful the French still are for having liberated their country. We do one thing at the end of every year, that is we stand in the town square and we sing Auld Lang Syne, because we know the next year there'll be somebody that doesn't come back. And this is our way of saying we've had a great life together. Thank you for letting me be here today and repeat my story. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I'm glad to either answer any questions or let you go further.
A book will be donated to the elementary school we support in your name, and if you could.
So I'm gonna make one person happy and 42
right.
people miserable.
That's right.
Last three are 104.
Chip.
There you go.